Hello, my name is Wangashi. I am the face behind Pastry Pleasures, the one who does the other videos. And for a few of these videos, I'm going to be talking about the baking business, basically. So it's going to be a series of a couple of videos. And in this particular video, I'm going to be talking about pricing and calculating, especially calculating the cost of goods per recipe, so that you can at least start making a profit or break even, and to avoid losses as much as possible, so as you can be able to grow your business. A couple of people have started this business, especially with the pandemic and people not wanting to just stay home and stay idle, start a business. So hopefully this will help someone who just started out, or someone who's been in business and has maybe been running a loss in the business, or just didn't know how to go about in calculating their costs. So to start, there are very, very many ways you can do this. I personally will show you my preferred method. It's not like set in stone. You can do whatever you find more comfortable with you. So one of the ways you can do this, and it's kind of one of the ways things I did when I started my business, I would go on the websites of other bakeries that existed then, and then I would look at the costs they have per cake, and then I unfortunately would charge the same. But I came to learn the disadvantage with that is most of these bakeries already have suppliers who sell to them in wholesale prices. So as much as I can set my price the same, me as a beginner setting the same price as someone like Pastry Pleasures who gets their products from a wholesale shop or from the company itself, I run a risk of getting losses or never even breaking even, because if I'm buying my things because I cannot yet afford to get my things at wholesale prices in bulk, maybe 50 kilos of sugar at a time, I can only buy maybe 4 kgs of sugar at a go. It's not going to cost the same as someone who's buying a whole gunia of sugar. So as much as that could work, you can just cost your prices the same as someone who's already in the industry. The biggest disadvantage with that is you might not make any money because you're not getting the same discounts or deals they might be getting. So as much as it does work, I would not advise you to do that, especially if you're a beginner. So the second method is the one I want to show you, which is calculating the cost of goods. So using your recipe, you calculate cost per item, and then that way you can get to know how much it costs you per recipe. So maybe if your recipe is in kilos, or if you have a recipe that just makes an 8-inch cake, when you need to make a 10-inch cake, which we always double the ingredients, you'll always know how much it will cost for me to double the recipe, triple, etc. So before I start on the actual pricing, there are a few things we need to know before we do this, and this also helps in understanding why we might have the same ingredients, same recipe, but our costs can't be the same because of very few things. Number one, which I had mentioned before, is am I buying my goods wholesale or retail? There are some things that you can comfortably buy wholesale and in big batches to get better costs, like boards, boxes, maybe toppers, as those ones don't expire technically. So things that you can buy and keep for a long period of time, I would advise you buy them wholesale. But other things, like say when during the busy season, you can buy things like flour, sugar, what else? Flour, sugar, icing sugar in bulk, considering you'd need to use them a lot. But if you're not baking a lot or you don't have a lot of work, I would advise not buying in big batches, because as you know, things like sugar, once you open, you need to use it immediately. Same with flour, margarine, butter, whatever. Eggs as well. You can't buy eggs in bulk if you're not going to use them. So my pricing should be considered in, am I buying wholesale or retail? So when you keep that in mind, you can always tell if also what's better. Sometimes things like milk are much cheaper sometimes at the supermarket than they would be outside of the supermarket, because maybe there's a sale. So maybe you consider buying milk there. And also, am I buying long life or pasteurized? I don't know what the other one is called. So if I'm using long life milk, it's cheaper, yes, and I can buy boxes that once in every 3 months, because I think they usually expire after 3 months if I'm not wrong. So I can do my shopping for milk in advance if I'm using long life. But if I'm using fresh milk, maybe straight from the cow, or pasteurized milk, which needs to be used immediately it's opened, my cost is going to be different because I'll keep buying milk for short periods of time. The next thing you should consider is what brands you're using. So, for example, some brands cost less than others. Maybe a good example would be vanilla. Vanilla essence that you could buy in the supermarket for 500 ml goes for approximately, if I'm not wrong, 180 shillings. But the vanilla, like say Pradeep, the one I've used before, showed on my channel before, it retails for 500 ml, 507 shillings if I'm not wrong. And if I was to use vanilla paste or vanilla, what's the other term? Vanilla paste or vanilla extract, if you've seen the advertisements or you know where to get it, you know 50 ml of that could go up to 1,000 shillings. So depending on what product you're using, what brand you're using, your costs have to be accounted for. Because if I was to be using Pradeep and I'm doing my costs for vanilla using the vanilla essence that's sold at the supermarket for 180 shillings, my margins would be, my cost would be unaccounted for that amount of money. So yeah, always consider the brands. We might not be using the same brands, and that's why I might be slightly cheaper than one person or slightly more expensive than another. Because even butter, depending on your preference, different brands of butter cost different prices, yet they all kind of taste the same to me. So always consider that. What brand am I using? But don't just buy a brand because it's cheaper. Is it a good brand? Same way you do with everything else that you use in your household, be it soap, detergent, whatever brand you use, different prices. They cost different prices. And also, depending on your preference, what you find as good quality to you, use that as your pricing. So now we're going to do our calculation. I will show you the method that I prefer to use, but in this video, I'm not going to talk about labor and things like, I'm not going to talk about labor because calculating for labor is an extremely flexible thing because it will depend on very many factors. So for this, I'm just going to show accounting for each item in your recipe. Okay, each item that you can account for. And then on the next video, I will show accounting for labor. So I'm going to show you how to calculate for your ingredients in this recipe. Don't calculate your costs according to where your wholesale, because at some point you will not find an ingredient using the wholesale price that you're used to. So as a nice person, I've gone and done the shopping for you. retail at the supermarket. So the reason about the best thing about doing your calculations using retail cost is once you buy, you get used to buying things at the wholesale store, different wholesale. I'm sure if you're a veteran baker, you know where the deals are, which shop to buy your sprinkles from, who's cheaper. The reason why you should try as much as possible to calculate your costs using retail prices is because sometimes you might not get an item at the wholesale shop that you're used to. For example, something like eggs. At the place where I go get my eggs from, I buy my eggs once every week. And if I don't go get them early in the morning before 11, they're usually almost sold out and I can't get as many trays as I normally get. So in that instance, for example, let's say I usually get a tray at 310 shillings and they only have 2 trays and I need 10 trays. I'm going to have to buy eggs from a different place. Maybe this other place, maybe the supermarket sells a tray of eggs at 370 shillings. So the reason why I advise, or my mom advised, to do your costing using retail is because of such instances. If I go get eggs at a higher price, I cannot start telling a client, so today the eggs were 307 shillings, not the usual 310 shillings, so you're going to top up 60 shillings for that. So try as much as possible to do your costing using retail prices. You might not be saving hundreds and hundreds of shillings or thousands of shillings, but those small savings that you'll make once you do your wholesale purchases are going to help you eventually because of those one unfortunate days, or maybe you went to your wholesale shop and they're closed and you still need a packet of flour. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to just have to buy at the supermarket or at the local kiosk outside your house. So to start calculating our cost, we're going to need just a few things. You need your retail receipt, a calculator or your phone to do your math, and pieces of paper to do the rough work. If you're good at Excel, with the Excel, using a spreadsheet, just make a spreadsheet on Excel and let it do it for you. But since I do not know how to use Excel, I'm just going to teach you this way. I find this easy and quick, but if you prefer that, just use that. So first things first, write down your entire ingredients list, each item, and then write down. So you're going to have some columns on your paper or spreadsheet where you have your ingredients, how many cups, grams, spoons of each item that you're using, how much it costs from your shopping. Like for example, how much a 2 kg pack of flour costs, and the unit cost for each item. For example, a cup of flour is 120 grams. So unit cost, how much does it cost for 120 grams of flour? And then calculate now the total cost. This recipe uses 2.5 cups of flour, which will be 300 grams of flour. So how much will it cost? That's the total cost. How much will it cost for the 300 grams of flour? So you do that for each and every item, and then we get our total cost of ingredients. So for this recipe we have butter or margarine, whatever you use. Also, before we go further, if you're using butter, just do your costing with butter, because not everyone can afford a cake with butter. Butter is not cheap. The cheapest, I don't even think there's a cheap butter. 1 kilo of butter costs the same as 5 kilos of margarine. So, or wholesale, I guess. So, it will be extremely hard for us to cost the same. And that's why you can find there is huge discrepancies, and some people saying they're being undercut. Some bakers are undercutting. And if you do use butter, fine. If you use margarine, please don't tell clients that you're using butter. It's unfair to your client. So we're going to list down our columns and then calculate the total cost without including labor, as I mentioned before. So butter or margarine, we use 250 grams, and then we have sugar, which is 1.5 cups or 300 grams. Then we have 4 eggs. We have 2 tablespoons of vanilla. Then we have flour, which is 2.5 cups, which is also 300 grams. And next we have milk, which is 1/2 cup or 125 ml. Then we have baking powder. That is just for the cake. Then you also have to account for your decoration. Let's say we're using buttercream, the recipe that I posted. We would have, again, butter or margarine, which is 200 grams, icing sugar, 2.5 cups or 300 grams as well, 1 vanilla essence, which is 1 teaspoon, which is also 5 ml. The 2 tablespoons of vanilla is 30 ml. Then we have, what else? We need to also add a cake board, a cake box, or boxes, depending on how you close yours. And what else do you need? Overheads. Okay, before we go to overheads, something else that you can always account for is, what do you use to finish up your cake? For me, if you follow me on Instagram, you've seen most of my cakes do contain strawberries. So I always add strawberries to my list, but I do not account it as strawberries because there's someone who might not want strawberries. They'll probably want raspberries or maybe Oreos or sprinkles. So for that, you can just have it down as miscellaneous. And then you can add electricity. For electricity, it's extremely hard to account for it, especially if you're on the, what's that? Is it prepaid? Postpaid? The one you pay at the end of the month. It's harder to account for that. And also, if you're working from home, it's hard to account for how much it costs to just do the baking as a home baker, because you're also using electricity to run the rest. Your fridge, your showers, your TV, whatever else you have in your house. For electricity, it's a bit hard to have per cake. Maybe you can put it, if you have tokens, someone with tokens, it's easier because you can watch from when you switch on your oven to preheat until you're done with the cake on that same day, how many units went. So at that point, it's easier to calculate for electricity. But if you're using, I think it's called a prepaid meter or a postpaid meter, the one for paying at the end of the month, that one is a bit harder, so you can just have a rough estimate, whether it's tokens or a prepaid meter. For electricity, you can just put an estimate per cake how much it costs. We're going to use this, our retail prices, to calculate the cost for items. So on this column, we're going to have 500 grams of butter is 566 bob, but 500 grams of margarine is 190 shillings. And then 1 kilo of sugar is, where was that? 109 shillings. Eggs, strawberry, salted butter, vanilla, pembe for baking, kienyeji eggs. I got 6 eggs at 180 shillings. I'm extremely shocked. 180. You must be joking. I got 6 eggs at 108 shillings. An egg is 30 shillings. I got an egg for 30 shillings. Anyways, see. I bought an egg for 30 shillings. Siamini. This is what I was talking about. I'm used to buying eggs at the most expensive. I bought eggs in 2021. A tray of 30 eggs was 330. That's the amount I paid on Monday for eggs, which meant 1 egg was 11 shillings. But today I bought 6 eggs for 180 shillings. So this is what I'm saying, do your pricing with retail costs, because in the event where I needed to bake a cake today or tomorrow and my wholesale guy didn't have eggs and everywhere around didn't have eggs, because I know even at the shop it's 15 shillings, maybe they don't have eggs, I would have had to go to the supermarket and I'd have gotten eggs from there. There's nothing I could do about that, because you can't, if you've already been paid deposit, you can't start telling your client, hey, we don't have eggs today, so can you move your order to when eggs come back? Since you can't do that. Yeah. And also, yes, I do understand it's because I picked just 6 eggs and not a whole crate of 30 eggs, but I genuinely don't need 30 eggs from the supermarket. This was just for the purpose of doing this mathematics. Next thing, vanilla essence. We need 30 ml. So if we use the Pradeep one, I know 500 ml is 570 shillings. And then flour, 2 kilos of flour is 135 bob. Milk, 500 ml of milk is 47 shillings. And this is, I know there's a sale right now. Milk goes between, it's I think 50 or 55. And I know it can go all the way to 60 depending on where you're buying. At the shop outside my house, it's 60 shillings for a packet of milk. And then for baking powder, 100 grams of baking powder is 23 shillings. And then again, once more, butter and margarine. Again, 500 grams is 566 for butter. And 500 grams of margarine is 190 for margarine. And then icing sugar, the one that I got, 500 grams was 114 shillings. Then vanilla, again, 500 ml is 570. Now for cake board, cake box, this is highly dependent on which boards you're using, because I know there's a difference between white and silver. If I'm not wrong, go for the same cost. And then there's black boards, there's gold boards, there's scalloped boards. So depending on what type of board you want to use, there's those thin ones that I don't like. So depending on what you want, do your estimate, do your costing with that, what you prefer to use. So I know for a gold board, if I'm not wrong, for a 10-inch, because this is a recipe for an 8-inch cake, a 10-inch board, if I'm very, very correct. The most expensive one I've seen was 70 shillings. But that's a long time ago, so I don't know. So if we do one board is 7 shillings. But always remember, if you buy, I know most places when you buy in bulk, boards and boxes in bulk, you do get at cheaper prices. So for the purpose of this, I'm buying one board and 2 cake boxes, because I always use 2 boxes to tent my cakes. So 2 boxes. I know there's a difference between the white boxes and the black and silver boxes. So depending on what you prefer to use, a 10-inch box, I will put 50 shillings because I'm not sure how much it goes for. It's been a while. 50 shillings a piece. And then say for this one cake, I'm only going to decorate with strawberries. Strawberries range between 180 and 299, but then it depends on the season and where you're buying your strawberries from. Things like strawberries, raspberries, always check out for sales. I know they fluctuate a lot, so try your best to buy them when there's a sale. But then again, you can't keep them for long because they are perishable and they perish very quickly regardless of how you store them. Miscellaneous strawberries. For this recipe, I'm using strawberries and I've bought 1 punnet, 1 packet at 210 shillings. You might use the whole thing, you might not use the whole thing. But at the same time, it's not like you'll go to the supermarket or the grocers and just take, I need 3 strawberries and just buy 3. You're still going to have to buy the whole punnet. So for miscellaneous, for this one, I'm going to put 210. And then I know the cost of electricity has gone quite up, but as of last year, 2020, I was calculating my electricity per 1 kg cake at 200 bob. So for 2021, for now, I'm going to calculate it at 250 shillings. And then now we come to our rough paper to do our calculation to get unit cost. Calculate our unit cost for each ingredient we're using. If you remember your primary school math, we're going to do cross multiplication to get the unit cost for each ingredient in our list. So for example, for butter, 500 grams of butter is going for 566 bob. So we're looking for the cost of 250 grams of butter. This one is easy because it's just half. So yeah, basically you just cross multiply. So it would be 566 times 250 divided by 500 grams. Or divide by, just 566 divided by 2. 566 multiplied by 250 divided by 500 grams, which is 283 shillings of butter, yeah. And then if we were using margarine, the same thing. 500 grams is 190. So how much is it for 250? So 190 divided by 2 because it's just half. So with margarine, it would be 95 shillings. And then sugar, 1 kilo of sugar, 1000 grams, 1 kilo of sugar is 109 shillings. So how much would it be for 300 grams? 300 times 109 divided by 1000. So that comes to 300 times 109 over 1000. So that comes to 32.7 shillings. And then what's next? 4 eggs. I'm still salty about these eggs, which means 1 egg is 30 shillings. So 4 of them would be 120. And then for vanilla, 500 ml is 570 shillings. How much would it be for 30 ml? It comes to 570 times 30 divided by 500. $570 times 30 divided by 500. So that would come to 34.2 shillings. Next we have flour. So 2 kilos is 2,000 grams, goes for 135 shillings. So what's the cost of 300 grams? So 300 times 135 divided by 2,000. So that comes to 20.25 shillings. And then milk, 500 ml is 50 shillings. I'm going to work with 50 shillings. So what's the cost for 125? 125 ml. So this will come to 12.5 shillings. And then baking powder, 100 grams is 23 shillings. What's the cost for 5 grams? Becomes 5 times 23 divided by 100. That's 1 shilling and 15 cents. And then coming to the icing sugar, the icing, if you're using, and I'm making an assumption that you'll only use one portion of this buttercream recipe to do the cake. 200 grams of butter or margarine, which comes to 500 grams of butter is 566. What's the cost for 200 grams? So 200 times 566 divided by 500. So if you're using butter, it's 226.4 shillings, and if you're using margarine, it would be If you're using margarine, it would be 76 shillings. And then for icing sugar, 500 grams is 114 shillings. What's the cost for 300 grams? Divide by 500. So this comes to 68.4 shillings. Vanilla, $570 times 5 ml divide by 500 ml comes to 5.7 shillings. Then cake board, as we said, 70. We're using 2 boxes at 50 each, so that comes to 100. And then 1 pack of strawberries at 210. And then our electricity at 250. So we're going to do our costing. Now our total cost, to find the total cost of ingredients. So I'll have one with butter and one with margarine, our total cost. So let's do the addition. So 283 plus 32.7 plus 120 plus 34.2 plus 20.25 plus 12.5 plus 1.15 plus 226.4 plus 68.41 plus 5.71 plus 70 plus 100 plus 210 plus 250. So if you're baking with butter, the cost of ingredients only comes to 1,434.29. This is before you add your labor. This is before you add your profit. This is just the cost of ingredients that you have used. Yeah, we're not accounting for toppers, we're not accounting for anything else. We're just accounting for ingredients today. So if we were to use margarine, it would be 95 plus 32.71 plus 120 plus 34.2 plus 20.25 plus 12.5 plus 1.15 plus 76 plus 68.41 plus 57, no, 5.71 plus 70 plus 100 plus 210 plus 250. That comes to 1,095 shillings, 0.93. So with this, since we have decimals and here in our country we don't sell things with cents, round off to the next shilling. So for butter it's 14.35, for margarine it's 10.96. So this is just the cost of ingredients for an 8-inch cake or a 1 kilo cake without doubling, tripling to make a 3 kg 10-inch or 10-inch cake. So yes, that's how you account for your ingredients. I'm going to talk about labor in the next video because there's very many different ways that I myself account for labor. Once you look at the recipe that you use, just go through each ingredient that you use. For example, in this video, in this recipe, the vanilla recipe, we're using 2.5 cups of flour, but if I was to make using the same recipe a chocolate cake, I would substitute the 1/2 cup of flour with 1/2 cup of cocoa powder, which would be 1/2 cup of cocoa powder would be 60 grams. And I buy a kilo, 1,000 grams of cocoa powder at 900 shillings, a 900 bob. But then again, this is at the wholesale price. I get it from town. If I'm buying cocoa powder at 900 bob, so for the 1/2 cup of flour, it would be it would be 54 shillings. So I'd have 2 cups of flour, which is 240 grams of flour plus 54 shillings. So always try your best to account for each ingredient. For something like baking powder, as it doesn't cost a lot, you can just have, just like your electricity, you can just have a rough figure, like 5 shillings or so per kilo of cake for 8-inch cake. But then again, as I said, it depends on your recipe. So try your best to do your costing for each and every cake that you have, or as many recipes as you have, so that you can be able to know how much to cost for each cake. Now, the biggest reason I would suggest you do this costing is, this is just how much you need to return the money you've spent to make each cake. This is very essential because whether you give someone a discount, but the main reason I would advise you to do this is, for example, maybe you're making a cake for, maybe my sister would like to carry a cake to, maybe she's going to visit someone, her friend, or maybe a children's home, but they want to contribute money for the cake. And I'm feeling generous this one time. She can just return my cost of ingredients. So if I know, if I'm making for her a 1 kg 8-inch cake, and I know it's going to cost me with butter 14.35 shillings, I can, if she gives me 1,500, I know my cost for ingredients is back. Because out of all the things you have to return to do your business is how much you've spent for each ingredient. That is the one thing that always has to come back before you start accounting for labor, for other utilities like rent, water, maybe you have an assistant, or other overheads. Before you start accounting for those, you need to know your cost of each ingredient so that you can start now understanding how much you need to pay yourself, how much to account for profit, how much to account for overheads, utilities, etc, etc, etc. So hopefully, until where I've reached, it will help you. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments, or you can DM me on Instagram. I will try my best to answer them in the next video or the one after the labor one. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this, and let me know if there is other topics you would like me to talk about. Thank you. Have a lovely baking time and a lovely business. Thank you. Bye.